We are going to begin the meeting. We have a very, very full agenda, so we're going to keep public comments to the 3 minutes. 3 minutes, and I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Okay, we will start with roll call. Okay, Councilmember Rogers.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Nusma.
Here.
Committee Member Livingston.
Here.
Committee Member or Chair Ickes.
Here.
We have a quorum and can do business. And then again, we're expecting Councilmember Davis virtually, and then the other committee members to join too at some point in the near future. So. Yeah, we can. Yeah, because we'll need Councilmember Davis to be here to do that.
Okay, and we're going to do public comment. If there's anyone online that wants public comment, just, use the app to raise your hand.
I think that's Claire's AI. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just tags along now and then.
Yeah. We can boot it if you want me to.
Okay, public comment. Mr. Mortel, do you?
I'm
None?
here for the liaison, not comment.
I'm sorry?
I'm here as a liaison.
Okay.
With the committee. You have questions, I'm here.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other public comment in the room? No? Okay. Should we approve the minutes? Okay, we'd like to approve the July 8th Finance and Budget Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd move item M1, approval of the July 8th, 2025 Finance and Budget Committee minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Taking roll. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Nusma.
I will abstain since I was not here.
Committee Member Livingston.
Aye.
And Chair Ickes.
Aye.
4-0 and 1 abstention. Thank you. Councilmember Davis just joined.
Okay, I'd like to get the approval for the virtual committee member Davis to participate.
So move.
Okay, taking roll in the virtual participation of Councilmember Davis, who just left. But we'll assume she's rejoining us. Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly. Aye. Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Committee Member Livingston.
Aye.
Chair Ickes.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, FB1, recommendation of the elimination of special assessment of interest payments. This was referred by City Manager Stowe.
Good evening, Chair, the members of the committee. So we just looked at the special assessment program, how that works. So over the years, we shared that 50-50, we call it, half of the share is borne by the city, the other half is by the property owners on that alley. One thing which we noticed that particularly in last couple of hearings which I attended, and Lara is here too, she can talk about, some of the people complain about the high cost, and obviously in last few years the cost has gone up, and particularly the people who said no to participate in. But obviously if we have more than 51% participation, they have to go with that one. And they say, yep, when we got these petitions and we said yes, and then finally when we did the hearing and kind of gave out the estimates, obviously post-COVID, some of those costs has gone up. The other thing is in interest is it varies depending on the year in which the hearing takes place. The ordinance language says that you cannot charge more than 2% to the rate, Fed rate on the 1st January in the year in which hearing takes place. So we have some people, like in the current environment, could pay as high as 4 or 5%. If something happened 3 years back when the lowest interest were there, 2021, it could be only 2%. Years back, we used to have a one standard rate, 7%, but it was too high. And that's when we changed the language that, okay, let's tie into this kind of Fed rate. The other thing is the number is not that huge because most people, like suppose, okay, they're paying 5%, they might pay for a year or two and then they pay off because they see that I don't earn enough, I rather pay instead of keeping in the bank deposit earning at 2 or 3%. So our revenue is around 10, 15 grand. I checked the number for this year, it is around $6,000 as of now, So it's a very low number. So I thought that considering the high cost, considering the complexity, varying rates of interest rates, and then the calculation, because special assessment program is unique to the city of Evanston. So there is no kind of software or all that. And with the varying rates of interest and all that, I thought that let's recommend this thing. I mean, that's a good thing. That would be kind of relief to the residents, particular people who participate in the ELI program.
And it's about, you said 6, but this says 15 to 20,000?
Right, 6,000 as of today, right now, as of July for the current year.
Okay, but year to date, it'll be 15?
10 to,
Okay.
yeah. Because a lot of people I have seen in the past, like with the big, they would write off a payoff, so there is no interest in it, you know?
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, so how are the residents billed? Do we send out a bill
Yeah, we
to
have
them
to
directly?
send. They
It's
have
not-
a chance to pay over 10-year
I'm
installment.
saying,
If they want to pay over 10, yeah, they can pay over 10 years.
Right, but we put something in the mail, we send
Yeah.
it from the city of Evanston. It's not done through the
No.
county.
The only thing done through the county is when it becomes past dues, then we send it to the Cook County. And that's the other thing is that calculation of interest rate, they haven't collected, at least they haven't sent us any money in last 5 years, Cook County.
My take on this is it's really hard to turn down revenue sources, given our budget situation. It's not difficult to calculate interest. You
No,
can
it's
set up a
right. That's not the
Excel
primary
sheet.
concern.
But the administration of the program probably makes it such that the juice is not worth the squeeze.
That's the thing, and particularly, as I said, the high cost. So, I mean, we heard that, and we had, like, Clara, at least 3 hearings in last year? Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then I heard a lot of people, and particularly some of those were kind of who opposed the petition, but they said, now I'll end up paying $7-8 grand,
Yeah.
So that's
If we were to discontinue charging interest for future programs, what happens to
No, we want to
residents
do
that are
it-
already committed to paying interest? Do they?
No, we
we're not
want
gonna
to
send
do
them a
it-
refund check.
No, we want to do it for everyone. So, like, suppose as and when council adopts this thing, we want to forgive for the existing as well as the future. Yeah.
Forgive existing, but
Yeah.
we wouldn't issue refunds to.
No, we can't do. Yeah.
Right, so just move
But
it
at least-
forward,
No more interest.
no more interest payments.
Correct.
So
And make it a simple
if it's
thing.
$10,000 or $12,000 a year and it costs more than that to administer, I think. the
It is
math
like we looked out for the software too, so that we can calculate the interest depending on whether, because it's a daily interest depending on which
Yeah.
they pay. I mean, but this is a unique program to the Evanston.
Again, calculating interest, not
No,
difficult.
that's, yeah.
Hours on Excel and you're done,
Oh, yeah.
and once and for all. But sending out 300 bills and keeping track of 300 bills is going to,
Right.
Yeah, that's all
And
grand
right
cost.
now, the database is Microsoft Access database, which is always not reliable. So that creates a lot of problems.
Are we ready to
Well,
vote?
I've been waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't see this.
So I have a question regarding, can you just talk for a moment about what do residents have to pay for versus what the city does
The residents have to pay half the cost
for,
of the LE project.
I mean, not for like grading, but for basic,
Laura can talk to more, but it is like 50-50, right?
this is alley paving.
LE paving.
so it's for paving, for pothole, what, I mean, just to have,
Talking about
a-
alley paving.
right, well, I think it's, and any improvements, right?
So the special assessment process governs the improvement of an alley where you have a gravel alley, usually with no drainage system, and we build an 8-inch concrete base and make it an improved alley with a drainage system, either a green alley where the water infiltrates into the ground, or one, if the soil's not appropriate for that, then we hook it to our drainage, our sewer system. And what is included is this process is governed actually by state of Illinois law. So it includes all of the costs associated with that, the legal costs, the engineering costs, the actual construction costs as well, and the financial management costs. All of that gets calculated. The total cost is filed with the court, the Cook County Court, and then is applied as a special assessment.
So it's, okay, thank you. And then also just for repaving, right? I mean, so.
We only would repave alley under special assessment, and we would manage it the same way. But because those requests would have to go into the wait list, the way that we're currently managing it, so those have not made it through the wait list yet, so that we've actually had to address that in the last few years.
Okay. So paving, repaving, any major improvements are 50/50.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. And then, I'm sorry, of course I'm going to support this, because I think just on a cursory, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but on a cursory look at just the immediately surrounding cities, Chicago, Skokie, and Wilmette, it looks like paving is covered by those cities. That they don't have a
I am not
50/50. So I
certain.
feel like we're already a little bit on the high end in terms of what we're charging residents for this service. So I will, of course, support this, not charging the interest. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you for letting us know. Okay, any more comments? The only thing I wanted to add to the resolution, I think you make a good point. At the very end, I think we should put repairs that started as of X date, because we don't want anyone coming back and saying they want a refund. So any, oh, so, so what would be the date, existing repairs?
Yeah, we would say for any future repairs that would be made and any existing as well. So there's
How
no,
about today, as of today's date, any existing?
probably say as of like the 1st of next year, effective 1/1/26 for the 2026 payments.
1/20/26. Okay, I just don't want someone coming back and saying I had it done 3 months ago and I want a refund, so. Okay, the resolution is staff recommends that the Finance and Budget Committee recommend that the staff draft an ordinance for adoption by the City Council amending Chapter 7-15-3 and 7-15-7 of the Municipal Code to eliminate interest on special assessments for alley repairs as of 1/2026. Okay.
So I'll make that motion to
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So confirming roll call, Councilmember Davis is back online, Committeemember McMillan is here, and Councilmember Suffredin has also joined us, so we're up to our full 8.
Do we need to
in-
motion?
No, we're good on
Okay,
Davis. The others
okay.
are good because they're
Okay,
in person.
great.
So
Okay.
I will continue starting my roll call with Councilmember Rogers and move around from there. So on the motion for FB1, Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly,
Aye.
Committeemember McMillan, Councilmember Nusma,
Aye.
Committeemember Livingston,
Aye.
Chair Rikus,
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin,
Aye.
and Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Davis, you there? Okay, we'll keep moving.
I think she tried to talk. I don't know.
Okay, I'll see what's going on with that. All right, thank you.
Okay, next is D1, discussion regarding the pension actuarial reports. Hitesh, did you want to?
I mean, I don't have the pension valuation reports yet, so, I mean, whenever they are made available, we can, we'll wait for the, next meeting, which is on September 8th or 9th, I think, Tuesday. But currently, I don't have any actual valuation reports.
And have we received, we haven't received any drafts or anything?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Okay. Are those with the pension? It's unusual. Do the pension boards have them and we don't have them?
I believe so. That's what they actually told me.
Yeah. Mr. Mortel, do you have the draft pension reports? The draft of the actuarial reports? Maybe.
Am I being requested to speak? Or?
I just want to.
We just want to know if the reports are, if you've received a draft and if you have an estimate of the actuarial.
Well, I ask loads of questions where I want just a yes or no. I never get them. So I can say this is they're with our council. They're being reviewed by our council. When we're ready to release them, we'll release them. I did note the last 3 years, those reports didn't come out till late August. I don't have the exact dates, but you can go back and they're online. And we got along fine with doing the budget with them coming in this late, and we want to have our councils review them. And Tim is also waiting for some paperwork from Hitesh, and it's a two-way street. We want paperwork and answers also that we don't get. So as for now, yes, we do have them, and when we're ready to release them, we will. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, so Chair Rikus, did you reach out to the board presidents to ask them to come this evening? I mean, was there any communication since we do liaison with them? And this is
No,
on the docket?
I mean, I would thought normal course would be that our finance committee our finance committee and the finance staff would get the reports because they need that to figure out the budget for next year, so.
But I do think we should, since we do liaison with the boards, I mean, I think it would be helpful to have both board presidents present for that discussion, so I would ask.
Well, they're on the agenda twice a year, and I did have them come a few months ago, so I don't know. To me, I thought it was normal course that if an actual report was available, that we would get a copy of it and the staff, but maybe I'm wrong, so I just thought that was normal course of business. So when do you think we'll be able to see the actuarial reports? Because we've been looking for them here for a couple months on our committee. What?
Well, I get.
Yeah.
I think President Morse.
I think it's for Hitesh.
Okay.
We talked about it.
Right, so I'll try that. I mean, I don't know what the team schoolmaster, the police pension has anything to do with the release of the actual report. I don't know. And I'm not aware of that. Okay, I would release it only after it as I get this. So that's the kind of a thing I came to know right now. But again, in the past, yes, it has never happened like this. It could be a day or two where they would get it. And then a couple of days. I mean, I reached out to the actuary and I didn't want to put them in an awkward situation. So I stopped kind of calling them or emailing them, but I think it has been out there for almost a month now. So
I think it's a matter of communication. I mean, from our board, we should be reaching out
last,
to.
I think the July 28th, I don't know, July 27th or 8th, when actuary said that I have shared those with the pension reports, pension boards.
Well, I just,
Whose reports are these?
These are the pension actuarial valuation reports prepared by the pension actuary. And technically, pension actuaries are decided or appointed, or it was decided, I mean, faster and faster, city and both the pension board. It's like what do you call? And again, I mean, I thought at one point to reach out to the pension board legal counsel because I'm the treasurer of the pension boards, both. And as a treasurer, I think I should have it whenever they're ready. But I didn't want to kind of be out, and I'm like, okay, let's wait. And I thought that hopefully before the Finance Budget Committee I would have it. It didn't happen, so, I mean, if you have any direction, I can do the follow-up with the actuary, or yes.
yes.
So we talked about in the last meeting, these reports I think are particularly critical because we talked about in the last meeting $60 million of actuarial adjustments to the liability, to the gross liability that came out in the year-end valuations. And it'll just be interesting to see, was that anticipated in the 2025 contribution so that it's not going to have a big impact on the 26, or we could be seeing, another couple $1 million of required contribution, of recommended required under the policy contribution. So I would say the sooner, there's a real reason to believe that the pension contribution will go up above the consolidated 30 of the two. So obviously the sooner you have that information, the city has that information, so we can start factoring that into the budget, the better.
I can reach out to the actuary again if you direct me, yeah. I mean, I've reached out to them a few times, and finally I had a good call and I understood their situation too. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to follow up anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I'm just having a hard time understanding if you're the treasurer of the board, why you're not getting the draft. I don't understand why, but hopefully you'll be getting it, and Mr. Mortel can release it to us and to you, so.
And for the police pension too, both we need.
Right, but I mean, those numbers are very important. They're a big part of our budget, and we have to start planning now, so we need to know what those numbers are.
And that was the other goal too, that when the actuarial valuation reports are available, we can ask the actuary to come and explain that. Mr.
Yeah, I definitely would like, because it was very good last
I
year when
think
they
it was a
came.
one-time adjustment last year when they kind of did the adjustment for 26 million to the liability. I mean, I have a couple of emails from the actuary. So they say this is kind of once in a lifetime with this.
Well, that was,
change some
I
of
think, the raises and some
Right.
of that stuff.
And
So
some of
hopefully
those
that's built
birthdays,
in.
Kind of, they're actually taking instead of a month by going by the exact date of the each, participant. So those are some of the changes which resulted in this kind of, increase in the liability.
Councilman Kelly?
Yeah, I would say, I hope there's not a reluctance to formally invite our board presidents to be here for that discussion on the pension reports. I think, why not reach out and ask if they're available on that next meeting to be here as well.
I mean, I think it's fine, but you're welcome to come to any meeting. It's an open meeting. But it's the actuaries that usually will present the report. And as the Finance and Budget Committee, we need that one number for our budget.
Right. I think there was a hope that we would have the agenda item was to go over the indicated contribution, because we talked about that in July. And we understood that the reports might not be forthcoming. So ideally, the discussion item tonight would have been, here's the indicated contribution, and you can start factoring that in. So I would say, and this is more broadly, we have got to find a way to, I think, reset the relationship between the city and the pension boards. I think that both sides, for a situation where both sides, I think, are in agreement of where we want to get to long term, I don't know what it's going to take on both sides, but I think that this, that we've got to find a way to have the city and the boards work in a more, collaborative manner, and whatever that's going to take to sort of, I say, reset the relationship would be, and I'm sure both sides in this can think about how the city and the boards can work together better, because there's not a fundamental difference in view of we want to get to full funding by 2040. And so anyway, that would be
Thank you.
my hope.
Mr. Mortel?
I quickly looked up. Last year, it came on the 26th, it came out, okay? And the year before, it came on the 20th.
The report?
The actuarial report came out last year. It's
Okay.
it's online. If you look it up on a city of it, came out the 26th. He said it normally takes a couple days. So we're not even behind what was, last year. And the year before, it was the 28th. That's black
So
and white.
you don't
I
have
don't make that.
you
that's
have
what-
the report, or you don't have the report?
I actually have the report, but the city has not, they received it much later than this, just even last year.
So they usually receive it after you receive the report?
Yeah. Yeah, but on the letter that is signed by Foster & Foster, that it was put out last year, August 26th, he said that it takes a couple days to get to him. And the year before it was 28th.
So the letter, when was this report signed by Foster & Foster?
I don't have that with me.
Okay, all I'm saying is he's the treasurer of the board. I would think
And
he would be able
get
to
that,
see the report.
But also, I'm the president of the Fire Pension Board, and I've asked some very direct questions, and I've had to, yes and no questions, and I've had to FOIA to try and get a response. And this morning, after two sessions of responses, I did get a response, and the city has admitted that they were commingling our pension trust funds with the city's operational funds.
Separate issue here.
That's a separate issue. We have a big
hang on
agenda
second.
today, and
You're trying to beat me up for not getting something just
I'm
like
not beating
that.
you up. We need a number. We want to move forward.
And these are yes or no questions, and that I'm answering, And it takes me weeks to get a yes or no question. I have to go to great lengths and file a FOIA to get one. And so after our council, this is good governance of our board, after our council's taken a good look at it, he's cleared it, you'll get them. And
Thank you.
Hitesh and I
Thank you.
discussed this on the 20th.
Okay.
At a pension board meeting on August 20th, I was reelected the president of the Firefighter Pension Trust Fund. And I just want to get this as a disclaimer out there right now. I'm addressing this body tonight in my capacity as president of Evanston Firefighters Pension Fund. All factual references contained herein are drawn directly from publicly available and official sources, including the City of Evanston's adopted budgets and independent audits, and documents straight from the city's website, etc. Where legal interpretation is provided, it reflects a good faith understanding of applicable fiduciary duties and public finance laws and is solely offered for informational purposes consistent with my fiduciary responsibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we're just anxious to get the report because we want to know the numbers, so.
And you did,
D2.
last 2 years didn't have it by now.
So wait, I'm sorry, but Sherry, one more point. So I thought we spent, to your point, David, that our next meeting would be about looking at this and, whatever, voting on the assumption or whatever, the rate. But we decided that it was you. We spent a lot of time deciding like who would meet in committee, and it was going to be you and Jack and Tim. I thought the three of you were to meet and bring that back to the finance and budget.
I don't remember that.
We had long discussions about how that would be
Yeah,
presented.
every year we have the actuaries come, we get the report,
Right,
they
but-
discuss the rate.
Right, because we've
All
had
we
issues with the rate. and
Okay,
we-
we're moving on.
But I'm sorry, but that was something, I'll show you the videos. That was a very clear, we'd established it was Tim and Jack and Sherry, right? If I recall, that's who would meet to discuss look at the actuarial report and bring back a recommendation to this committee.
I'm sorry, I don't remember. Show me the video. Okay. We're going to go to D2, 2026 Capital Improvement Plan.
Do you have the remote? Okay. Hello, members of the committee. My name is Laura Biggs. I'm the city engineer. And we have been working for the last several months to put together a proposed 2026 capital improvement plan in advance of the budget. This is still just proposed. Obviously, it has not been adopted. It's not really actually the final recommendation yet, as we're still refining some of the information. But we did want to discuss some general things that are happening and get feedback if it's available. Next slide, please. So there's been a number of challenges we've talked about over the last several years. I just want to briefly go through some of those because they do affect this year's budget. The first has to do with our lead service line replacement program that is both federally and state mandated, as well as our current plan to increase the rate of water main replacement. So staff had proposed a series of multi-year water rate increases that would take place over 5 or 10 years to cover the cost of these programs. This year, we believe that we can defer the water rate increase and not do it because we have received some help for some of the capital costs through the Illinois EPA as well as through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity from the state of Illinois. So that has helped us defray some of the costs. So this year, we believe we can stay stable on our water rates. Next slide. Next challenge, we've been talking about the need to address some of our legacy park infrastructures. These 11 parks that were so deteriorated that they really needed a complete renovation. We have been moving forward with that. We have 2 that are completely finished at this point. We have 4 that are going into construction, and we have not started on 5 others. These were the less concerning of the legacy parks. Our 2026 budget proposes to start design on Raymond Park.
Ms. Briggs, can you highlight if there's things that are going to be over the budget on some of these improvements?
I guess I don't quite understand
Oh, okay.
that
This is
question.
This is the proposed budget.
This is the proposed
Or the
budget.
preliminary.
Okay, okay.
Preliminary budget. Okay, next slide. We also talked about the need to address 6 legacy facilities. We have 2 of those that are nearly complete or complete in construction. We have master plans for 2 of the facilities, the Service Center and the Noise Cultural Arts Center, and we are beginning implementation. We have actually completed the first project at the Service Center. The next one's much, much larger, but we are moving forward this fall with issuing a request for proposal to hire a consultant to do that design work. And then the Noise Cultural Arts Center, the City Council had asked us to defer that for a few years, so it doesn't necessarily have a budgeted cost in 2026. However, we have a putting assets to work study that is starting, and that will include the property, the Noise Cultural Arts Center property, for further investigation of how we could perhaps get more effective use or other things happening there. Next slide. Oh, and then the 2 facilities, we still have discussions ongoing. The Civic Center, we've obviously on a temporary basis moved to 909 Davis. The 2100 Ridge Avenue property is also considered in the pause study to discuss what the next steps are for that property. And Police Fire Headquarters, we are working still with NU to negotiate potential of acquiring 1801 Maple. It would be most likely significantly less expensive to refurbish that as a police fire headquarters than to build a new police fire headquarters on the existing property. However, if we are unable to reach an accommodation, that is sort of our backup plan at the moment. Next slide. Challenge 4, special assessment alley funding. I think we got right to the heart of the matter earlier, in which that we have long-term demand to improve our alleys. There's a lot of advantages to having an improved alley that range from everything to the benefit of drainage and how it impacts with private property to the ability to just clear snow and ice and be able to access your garage in the winter. However, we currently have a wait list for petitions of 88 people. We typically, at our current funding levels, clear 5 to 10 petitions a year, which result in 2 to 3 successful petitions where we actually improve alleys. So people getting on the petition now can expect, or on the wait list now, can expect to wait 9 to 10 years to be able to actually get a petition to even try to see if there's neighborhood support. Obviously, a lot changes in a neighborhood in 9 or 10 years. We did receive some additional funding in this past year, which allowed us to do additional work, but we still need to sort of determine a better pathway forward on this 50-50 program. However, with constraints with budget and stuff, right now, we don't really have a way to do that. And in fact, one of our primary sources of funding has been community development block grant funding, and because of changes in CDBG rules, we don't really recommend using that for alleys anymore. So we'll probably be doing fewer alleys now. Challenge 5, sidewalk improvement needs in business districts. So this is one where we've had a lot of complaints and legal issues with the brick paver sidewalks in business districts. Over time, we had been changing those out to a new standard, probably about 50% of the way done with that program. However, in consultation with our legal department and city manager, we have moved forward more rapidly with trying to replace all of the paver block sidewalks in the next 3 to 5 years. So we are currently under construction for this year's on Church Street, on Benson from Clark to Davis, and on Clark from Benson to Sherman. Next year, we propose to continue this work, and we're looking at Chicago Avenue from Church to Davis.
I'm sorry, Ms. Biggs, when you say challenges, does that mean that it's going to cost more than expected, or?
The challenges were that these were things we were not doing or that we're not funding adequately, and we are trying to now fund those things, but we really don't have a magical funding source that has come along with the need to get the work done. And so we're trying to manage these and determine, we continue to work on determining the best way to try to do that.
Thank you.
And then last year, we talked about Fountain Square replacement funding. We did have a meeting with City Council in late 2024 where we were given feedback to basically replace the fountain in kind. We are about to issue an RFP to start that process through a design-build type contract. So that's historically what we talked about. There's two things we were sort of wrestling with this year. One is parks infrastructure funding, which goes along kind of with the legacy park thing. We have, while we're budgeting for replacing these 11 legacy parks over a 5-year or 6-year period, we also invested in trying to go with a new strategy where we target just replacing individual amenities as they fail. This would appear to be significantly less expensive than waiting until the whole park's deteriorated. However, meanwhile, while we retire these legacy parks, we are sort of double paying for things. Otherwise, we just get the next generation of legacy parks that we have to address as things continue to fall apart. And what we're finding is that although we budgeted about $2.2 million in a series of 6 line items to address individual amenities like rehabilitating tennis and basketball courts, resurfacing pathways, replacing playground equipment, that is really inadequate to the needs. This year, in the last few months, we've removed playgrounds from 8 parks. We estimate it would cost about $4 million just to replace the playground equipment in those parks. But we were budgeting $600,000 a year for playground equipment replacement. So we've increased it to $1.5 million. But the truth is that we're just still, like, there is a funding deficit versus the needs. And we can play with strategies about how we try to make things cheaper and less expensive, but we have not come up with a solution to this yet. And the way that our park funding works, it relies heavily on general obligation debt that is rebated by property tax. And if we wish to control that funding source, then we need to figure out a better funding source or an alternate funding source for park improvements that will help us maintain the number of assets that we have. There is an alternate solution, which is to have fewer amenities that have to be maintained. I am not suggesting we debate that tonight, but that's kind of where we are. I don't know that staff is able to identify a way that we can control our debt issue and still maintain all of the current amenities that we have in parks in Evanston. So that is something to look at long-term. How are we going to address that? Next slide.
Have you worked with the Parks and Recs Board to see, or they want everything renovated?
I think that we have not worked closely so far. They have expressed concern that even though we've recently substantially increased the amount going to parks, that they still don't feel it is an adequate amount of funding. But there are many needs that need to be paid for with debt, and so we're constantly trying to balance, and I don't feel that they are not feeling that we are appropriately funding parks improvements yet.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes, I agree, but I also think they're concerned about the amount of funding towards consultants and third parties as opposed to increasing outsourcing. And I think we'd all like to see, consideration of increasing our staff size in the greenways to help maintain our parks more regularly. So that's what I've been hearing also from Parks and Rec, that it's how we're allocating our funding.
So our zero-based budgeting consultant, Raftellus, is actually going to help us examine that as a strategy. However, I think we're still going to run into this situation because there are so many different types of amenities and the things that are needed to be done. Like, let's say we fund a crew of people that do playground equipment replacement. Well, asphalt pavement resurfacing is really different, as is, and that applies to pathways and it applies to court rehabilitation. which are essentially asphalt resurfacing projects. So we can address some of that, and I think we should be creative and try to figure out what is the most cost-effective way to do some of these things. But we are still going to need to purchase equipment and pay for things, and right now, we're not there. And our 5-year program, I think it shows something like $2 million worth of consulting fees for parks, which we are actually already actively working to bring down from when we talked about it with the Parks and Rec Board in July. But if you look at that one statistic, that just what we've removed in playground equipment that was unsafe in 2 months would require $4 million to replace, we can eliminate every consulting dollar in the Parks and Rec budget for capital improvement, and it doesn't even make a dent in the needs versus the amenities. I mean, the amenity costs versus the available funding. So, I mean, this is bubbling up. Like a lot of the other things I did a report on, I probably won't continue to report on because they're wrapping up. But this is now bubbling up as one of our most significant challenges that we do not have an answer to right now. Sidewalk improvement funding. This is a program that we revised significantly in 2022, moving away from a 50-50 program to the city funds everything in an attempt to improve equity and also be a lot more efficient in how we manage contracts. And we are just struggling with cost increases. So we've had two things that really worked against us. One is just rapid construction inflation over the last few years. But the other is that the federal level, they adopted some increased requirements for ADA that was roughly entitled the PROAG standards. And that means that we're replacing a lot more per block. Just the tolerances of what's allowed are much less now. And so that is slowing down our sidewalk replacement program.
We have a couple questions. Councilman Newsom.
I was just getting in line for when Laura finishes, I have responses or questions on a bunch of these things.
Okay, and Councilor Kelly, was that from before? Did you have a question?
No, it was about the parks. So.
Yeah. So this is just to note that we are aware that we're getting a lot of complaints about this. We are working to try to figure out a better solution, but truthfully, we just had a 40-year backlog of sidewalks that need to be replaced, and it's going to take a certain amount of time to get through that. So changes for 2026. We have modified the structure of how we're reporting out the CIP somewhat. So we're showing more of a 10-year CIP. We're still showing 1 year in detail. We're looking closely at 2 years to try to balance out 2 years in advance. But what you'll see when we publish it is the 1 year detailed breakdown, 4 year more of a summary of, and then we are holding a 6 to 10 year. We've not fully populated that yet because this is our first year having that, but we are showing things like our annual cost items in the 10 year. And as we develop projects that just move beyond what we can accomplish in 5 years, we will place them in the 5 to 10 year column. Next slide. And then just generally how the capital improvement program is broken down, we have it by more like by topic. So street resurfacing and utilities, transportation, parks, facilities. We have added a category that is called significant facilities. Those are noise, service center, and the police fire headquarters. Those projects are just outside our ability to manage a $20 million or whatever $1 million general obligation bond issue. And we should look at options for how we're going to fund those things separately from how we fund everything else. So we're just tracking them separately. We do need to really talk about and identify sources of funding for those to discuss how we want to manage that. But we're showing for, I'm sorry, it says 2025. For 2026, we are showing approximately $85 million, which is actually pretty consistent with what we showed for 2025. So that is around our sort of typical level, but that does not include those significant facilities.
Sure. And
I thought our approved capital plan for 25 was more on the level of 21, $22 million?
For GO bonds,
For GO
yes.
bonds.
85 million includes everything all in.
Includes the enterprise funds, which are
Yes.
billed, which are in the
was my
rate
question.
base.
Yes,
Okay, got it.
So if we net that out, is it similar to the,
it is. It's pretty similar.
Councilor Kelly, did you have a?
Could you go back to the previous slide? So, just so I understand, so this is something I've been asking for forever, and I'm excited to see us get a 10-year forecast and expenses. Now, so for projects, so what I'm interested in knowing that we have it scoped out like major upgrades. So for example, noise, we've needed HVAC forever so that we know approximately when, within a couple of years. So does that include like major upgrades, roofs, HVAC, not just big, not projects like a new civic center? I'm not.
Right, no. It is intended to. And for things like roofing that we budget every year, we are putting that in. And then there's a few projects we know about that are in that 5 to 10 year range. But we haven't really fully populated it for everything that would occur within the 5 to 10 year range.
Okay, I think that would be really helpful, so we don't end up with, okay, all of a sudden, accumulated to $20-30 million, and so that we really do plan out, project out those needed upgrades for our facilities and our parks.
I think that is our long-term goal, and that's why we included it at your suggestion. We just, right now, we don't have all that information pulled together, but as we go through, in particular, there's a project proposed in this year's capital program that will help us with the facility stuff. That is about doing an impact assessment of all of our facilities to see what would be the cost to comply with the healthy building ordinance. And so, for instance, I don't think that we will probably get everything done in 5 years, but that's the type of thing where we can then go and populate the 5 to 10 year range so we can carry all of our costs and know what they're going to be for the 10-year limit.
And Councilmember Davis, online, you had a question?
Yeah, so the first year I already sent some, but I can't find the 5-year plan online with the link, but it doesn't work. My next question is, when will the 10-year plan be available, were you thinking or estimating?
It will be available when we publish the capital improvement plan with the budget, because we are still working on some things that's not published yet. However, it will not really be fully representative of everything that's supposed to happen in 5 to 10 years. In this year, we populated the stuff we know, but we don't have everything that would happen in that 5 to 10 year segment.
So when will the budget be done then? What date are you expecting?
The budget's typically posted in the first Friday in October.
Okay.
Yeah, the proposed budget.
You said it's proposed budget?
The proposed budget, yes. The adopted budget is not posted until after it is adopted in November.
Yeah, of course,
usually.
okay. And so the 10-year budget, whatever shows up in there, I guess what I'm also wondering is, would you, you mentioned that it will not be complete. Does that mean that, would you still be okay with us mentioning things that we'd like to have in it? Or when you caveat that, is that just, what are you trying to warn us of? I'm going to be clear of like setting expectations. I think you're trying to set something, but I'm not quite clear what it is.
No, absolutely. So when we know of costs that will go beyond the 5-year capital program, rather than just say, hey, we know there'll be something, we'll put it in that category. And so things that are annual things like roof replacement, playground equipment replacement, those types of costs where we're proposing to spend a pretty fixed amount each year, street resurfacing, water main replacement, those things we can already populate in that 5 to 10 year category. And occasionally we do know a project that is that is out there that's really expensive that we can put in there. But I expect that it is not really the complete picture of everything that has to happen right now. For example, some of our legacy parks, they're actually not as urgent as some other needs as we get towards the tail end of those parks. And so at least one of them, I think, goes into the 5 to 10 year category area. which is, is fine if that is what the priority for it is. We just didn't want to lose track of it. And so there'd been a number of comments, including those from Councilmember Kelly, that she wanted to see this. And so we are implementing it this year, but it is not fully fleshed out.
Okay, and so I know the budget, this is my first year, so I apologize if this is a silly question, but will the budget include a retrospective of how well we did in sticking to our budget over the past year?
For capital, I don't know that it really does. That is more what the CAFR does. The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. I don't know what you guys do for the regular budget presentation.
In the budget document itself, in the proposed budget, we do a retrospect, kind of look back at the current year, current projections, and make some estimates on how we're doing for the current year. We're also doing a presentation after this item, kind of doing that retrospective as well. And then when we present the budget in October, we do a number of presentations, and a lot of that is sort of looking at where we think we're going to finish this year. So you have an idea going into next year what our options look like.
Okay, and so the reason I ask is because I know I can get the sense from some of the things that Laura said that in order to, make improvements in our budget, we'll have to make some tough choices. And I know that staff is very reticent to give information that can be perceived as leading or, problematic. Like, for example, if you wanted to include how much if we were to decide that we wanted to have less parks and we wanted to include how much foot traffic we have at each park, I could see that resulting in some type of, outrage, like some complaints from residents feeling as if their parks are being unfairly targeted, as an example. But at the same time, I do think that to some degree, we have to look at our retrospective so that we can give good recommendations for all the council members and for the committees to get an idea of what we can do to fix some of these structural problems in our budget. What I'm also getting at a little bit is, if it is possible, what I recall, I can't remember the name of the person who just came up, and I'm really sorry, but I do remember you giving the comprehensive presentation, and that the issue with a lot of our CIP were unplanned purchases and projects that were not in our original plan, that did not seem as if they came from staff, but rather from city council. And so I guess I'm wondering how often that happens. Right? Is that the cause? Like if we were to go do a retrospective back 5 years to see if it's repeatedly the case that we keep coming up with city council proposing new projects that pushes us over on our budget. And if that means that we need to change our policies or ordinance and the, rules of conduct for the city council members, or even just the paradigm that we use for how we conceptualize our budget and spending and what our options are. What is my point? My point is that I think there's two things. The first is I would like a retrospective specific to the capital improvements for, I think, like 1 to 5 years, if that's possible, so that we can identify trends. And if there is any way to very lightly and as politically, nice as possible to, and maybe it's the case that it has to be a couple of city council members who just meets with staff one-on-one or something, but we do need to get an idea of what solutions are possible. And then in our budget, like it doesn't, if we say we need to cut costs where we have no information there of how to cut or where to start, but staff has an idea and they're just not comfortable saying it, I'm worried that there's an information gap forming in that type of way. And this might be more for the other committee members to try to think of ways that we can make that information more forthcoming and for the staff members to feel comfortable presenting that information without risk of being berated or, attacked via email or whatever other things do.
Yeah, Councilman Davis, just to let you know, there was some instances where some projects went to council and they were approved, and our committee came up with a policy that anything over 500,000 would come to us to discuss, so that it's not just all the council voting on it, we're giving some input on that. So we did put some measures in place to try to avoid some of what you're talking about.
When did we add that?
Last year.
An estimate.
Last year, so,
May,
yeah, so if there's
or,
something
yeah.
that comes up,
May 24. I
you'll
think.
come to us, Laura, and say, you know, we want a fire truck or something like that, that will come up to our committee.
Yes.
Oh, it was May 24th of this year.
No, May in 2024, I think, was when
Yes.
that policy was.
And I'm happy offline to go through it with you and show you kind of how we did that.
Okay, sounds good. Those are all the questions. Thank you.
Next slide.
What, I don't know if
Keep
she's,
going.
I can't wait. So where do CIP projects originate? I know most people have seen this thing, but really a lot of the stuff comes from operations and maintenance issues or from comments that we get from the public, which are usually funded either through city council members, boards and commissions, or 311. So to the operations and maintenance staff. But the initial CIP is obviously developed by staff. We also look at our adopted plans. So an example would be the Climate Action Resiliency Plan or the Streetlight Master Plan. And then we try to incorporate items from those plans. There's also legal requirements like lead service line replacement that drive projects in the capital program. But I would say the majority of stuff does come from either actual operation and maintenance issues that we're having with our infrastructure or through citizen comment that gets filtered through a variety of pathways back to staff. And so now moving on, how did we put this together, how we're presenting it? So based on previous feedback from previous years, we did this last year. We sort of developed two lists of projects. We have heard from council in the past that they really, once a project started, they're less likely to want to just cancel it outright when we've already done either financial investment or we've done significant public engagement. So we have a list of projects that have already started, and then we'll show the list of projects that are new and have not had any investment or engagement so far. And this again should say 26, not 2025, my apologies. And then, so these ongoing projects, we're just sort of expecting them to be funded, but as we go through the CIP process and the budget process, obviously, any project can be pulled off by a council member for discussion. Is this really the appropriate use? Staff is not trying to preclude that discussion. We're just trying to make more efficient use of city council members' times based on past feedback. Next slide. In terms of new projects, these are ones that are not just beginning a new phase. Like, it's not that it's new to construction, but projects where we have done very little work at all in terms of investing money in studies or consultants or actually beginning work in construction. But truthfully, as we go through the budget, the issue that is always most concerning is those projects funded by general obligation debt. So as we go through, we're really going to focus on those in the discussion. Again, any project that is of interest to be discussed, we're happy to discuss. Next slide. And so as we look at the overall funding, it's a little bit of a matchup game that we play when we get project ideas, and then we have to figure out how they're funded because there are many, many sources of funding. So we utilize a number of types of funding, everything from our enterprise funds like water or sewer. We use loans that filter through the enterprise funds. Motor fuel tax. We do have projects that are funded as part of tax increment finance districts. That's actually a major use of our TIF funds, particularly in the last 5 to 8 years of a TIF. I would say we spend quite a lot of the TIF money on infrastructure. And then there's some other funding sources that include things like CDBG, which is pretty minor at this point. Sometimes we get private donations. The EEA is funding a significant portion of the public canoe launch project, for example. But in reality, it really boils down to the GO debt. And so this year, we would really like to target $20 million, and I'll talk about that number in a little bit. We are currently at $30 million, which we do not think is tenable. So we're going to apply a rating system to try to reduce it down. If we were to budget $20 to $23 million in GO bond debt through the natural attrition of some projects undergoing some delays or barriers being placed to getting certain things done, we would be able to hit a $20 million GO bond issue. So we're really focusing on what's budgeted in the list of projects needs to be $22 to $23 million if we want to hit $20 million, but what should be budgeted in the capital fund is a $20 million GO bond. So I just want to explain why there may seem to be a discrepancy, but we are really committing that we are not going to sell more than a $20 million GO bond unless something crazy happens. Next slide. And so that really doesn't include the significant facilities. So I've outlined these here. That's the next project in the service center is electrical HVAC. It actually includes substantially more than that, but it's centered around those items. So we are about to issue the RFP for that, and we'll begin to design and then be moving into construction over the next several years. Also, the new facility, the police fire headquarters, between all of the things we have going on, these are probably our two most important things that we're doing because they really revolve around critical facilities that cannot support our necessary safety operations as a community. So these are things that we really do need to discuss. What's our best way of working through the funding as we move forward? And then the noise, electrical HVAC modernization, because of a variety of emergency repairs, this can be deferred a little bit, but it cannot be deferred forever. And so we need to consider that as well. Next slide, please. So here are the criteria that we have developed to prioritize new debt-funded projects. This criteria was not developed by engineering staff solely, but was done in conjunction with a variety of our city departments, including the city manager's office. And so you can see it encapsulates everything from trying to really label, are the assets failing and they need an immediate repair, to is it a health safety risk? Does building this somehow make things better and less expensive on the O&M side, and things that are just annual funding sources. In our ideal world, we get to a stable place where we know we just need to fund $1.5 million in street resurfacing every year, and that's what's necessary to keep our assets in an appropriate level. So we're really trying to work towards that and be able to be more consistent in what people can expect the capital fund or the capital program to look like. Some of these criteria are, in the staff's opinion, a little bit more important than others, like risk to life safety is pretty darn important as compared to some of the other things like the operational impact. Will it increase the amount of O&M? Some life safety things will, some won't. Life safety has really got to be something that's high on our list. Next slide, please. And then I was talking about our GO bond debt target. I promised a robust discussion of that later in the presentation. It's not very robust, but I did. So one thing that we've talked about a lot is that we're retiring as a community $10 to $12 million in GO bond debt per year. So that is based on what was sold as debt 20 years ago. And if we increase beyond the $10 to $12 million that we retire, there will be a property tax impact to that unless the city comes up with an alternate way of paying those bonds. And unfortunately, $10 million in 2006 is really equivalent to something like $19.8 million in 2025 if you look at construction inflation over the years. And a lot of the issues that we're having are really because we haven't been funding our infrastructure appropriately. We underfunded it substantially, I would say, for about 20 years. And so now we are seeing a lot of things come due. So this is most impactful for parks and facilities. And I think we see that while we do have big projects on this transportation side, a lot of those projects are about meeting some of our goals. They are deteriorated infrastructure, but they're about things like expanding our bike lane network and really trying to meet some of the multimodal goals. The issues are we have other sources of funding for that infrastructure that are not debt. Often we need to provide matching funds, which we do with debt, but those big projects, we are able to manage the cost. Yes, we have streets that have potholes, but we have a system of trying to first address them with crack sealing, then patching, then going to resurfacing. That really keeps things in reasonably decent condition. We do not have that system yet for parks and facilities, and those have historically been paid almost exclusively by debt. And so that is, if we want to cut the GO bond debt back to $10 million and keep it there, we will be negatively impacting primarily parks and facilities. So I explained this. We will target $22 to $23 million in the list of capital projects, but we will be working towards a $20 million bond sale annually. Next slide, please. So I have said a lot of stuff. We have so far reviewed the CIP previously with Parks and Rec Board, and we will be reviewing it with ADA Advisory, the Environment Board, and ultimately with the City Council. But before we get there, we do want to assign ratings to the new projects to try to get down to what we consider to be a manageable list where we have $22 to $23 million budgeted for GO debt. Tonight, or in the next couple of months, and maybe even over the next couple of years, I think what we're looking at from this committee is we certainly welcome feedback on our structure or how we're doing the criteria to prioritize projects, but really talking about GO bond debt and how we're going to manage that versus our needs, as well as how we will fund those very large facility projects that are on critical facilities, and how we will fund parks infrastructure, or are there decisions that need to be made? And I don't think it's obviously entirely the responsibility of this board. I think several boards and commissions and the City Council are going to have to work together to deal with these big, big issues, but the purview is going to definitely be under what this committee handles, which is long-term funding and how we manage that. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions, and I thank you for your time.
Councilman.
Thank you. I have 5 points to make, or 5 questions, so I'll run through these fairly quickly if I could. Councilmember Davis asked, what was staff trying to say without saying it? So what I'm hearing, and how I will answer that question of Councilmember Davis, is fundamentally we don't have enough money to do everything that we need to do. One of the reasons for that is that our debt policy has kept us at $10 million a year for 20 years, during which time prices have doubled. We're using more than just GO bonds to fund parks projects, but that's indicative of 20 years of austerity is now catching up with us, and we find ourselves in a hole that we're going to have to reckon with one way or the other. So I guess unless we want to really cut back on what we're offering, we're going to have to bring in more money one way or the other.
And I just want to be clear. I am not recommending that we do anything to close parks or facilities. I in no way mean to say that. I think we need better management plans, but that decision would never happen without a lot more people than me weighing in. My job is just to highlight the issues, not to make a recommendation on our assets.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying. Going back to the beginning, with regards to the water rate, you mentioned there's a way we can get by without increasing the water rate next year for 2026?
Yes. When we talked about a series of long-term water rate increases necessary to fund lead service line replacements, we committed to really looking at it each year to see what it had to be each year. And when we looked at it this year, because we got significant principal forgiveness from the IEPA and we received a grant from DCEO for $1 million, that makes it so that we're good for this year, for 2026.
But we're not, that doesn't mean we're setting ourselves up for an even bigger increase the following year.
No, that is not my understanding. We will likely need an increase the following year, similarly to how we said that we'd need many, basically annual increases for quite some time.
Right. So one of the, philosophical approaches that's gotten us into this mess is to hold things flat for as long as we possibly can, and then all of a sudden run into a cliff where we need to, significantly increase revenues. If there's a way, if it makes sense to kind of ramp them up slowly to keep up with inflation, to keep up with cost increases, that makes sense. But that's not the case here. Some extra money materialized, we can get by in 2026, not at the expense of 27 or 28.
No, that is my understanding. I did not run the rate model, but that is my understanding.
Okay, good. And so then on the subject of parks and our long-term capital improvement approach for the parks, I think we've made some improvements over the last few years. I still think there is room for improvement in our process and our approach. Whether that involves reevaluating consultants versus in-house, or the entire process of how we plan parks, from public engagement to design to construction. I want to keep all ideas on the table, think creatively about how we can get the best bang for our buck. And I think there is significantly more improvements we can make there. Maybe we standardize on parks, on playground equipment. Rather than having each park be a kind of bespoke, customized park, it certainly seems reasonable to assume we could save money by having, one type of slide and one type of merry-go-round and one type of monkey bars that we could use everywhere, rather than being custom for each park. So I'm not necessarily advocating for that right here and now, but I'd like that kind of thinking to be on the table as we look for ways to more efficiently spend our money.
One thing we've been able to do is, because we hired an additional staff member, a landscape architect, we believe that we can eliminate the majority of consulting services for parks, with a caveat about public engagement, because it takes a lot of resources the way we do it now. And we've had a number of parks, because we have a lot of parks in planning and design right now. And people are just not attending the meetings. But when we send out a survey, we often get a really good return. And so we're going to propose that for most park improvements, certainly for playground equipment replacement, that we move to a situation where we do one meeting and one survey, because we're just not getting a lot of really good information with the additional work that we're putting in.
Fitzsimmons Park was a good example of that.
It was, and it wasn't the only one. And I think the goal is not to eliminate public feedback, because we found it to be very valuable, but to put it in a place where it's actually meaningful and it optimizes our resources for staff. Right. And that seems to be, we want that place where people can come to a meeting if that's how they want to interact. But really, it's the survey that presents the same information where we get real participation.
Thanks. My next comment is on sidewalks. I want to make the point, it's not just sidewalks in the business district that need attention. Also in the neighborhoods, as I'm sure every council member has heard from constituents. And I'm not sure what the exact number is, but we pay millions of dollars, at least hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in legal settlements for trip and fall cases. And I would much rather spend that money on fixing the underlying problem and making sidewalks more safe for everybody than, paying for somebody's medical bills who trips over a sidewalk. So I'm glad we have a long-term plan, and I hope we can figure out a way to fund that adequately so it doesn't take quite as long as it might otherwise take. And then some questions or comments on the planning approach. I like the fact that that you've developed this rubric to help us prioritize projects. I'm wondering have you tested that rubric on any projects, and we need to allow ourselves some degree of flexibility when we're putting together a new approach like this.
No matter what rubric we use, there will always be a project that just is important to the community and it's not ranking well, and we just know
some reason
it has to be prioritized. And so I'll give you an example. Pickleball was that type of project that fell in, and it really didn't meet the standards for anything, but it's not like after all of the issues we were having, we were going to say, oh, well, no pickleball. And I think that project, which is under construction now, will be a huge benefit to the community. But actually, the Assistant City Engineer, Chris Seuss, has been really instrumental in developing all this criteria, and he's been testing it. So we've been doing some refinements on it. We just haven't gone through and
I could envision
gotten everything where we want it.
Some capital projects for our water treatment plant, which are essentially paid for by our wholesale customers, that might not necessarily score high on the rubric. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but we would want to do those anyway.
Yes, likely that is true.
Yeah. Okay. I have a lot more to say, but I'll stop here for now.
And I have just one thing for Hitesh. This is just a comment, but when we look at the bonds, I would like to look at the interest expense and not just the principal, because back in 06, 07, 08, interest rates were probably a little higher. So even if we're doing 20 million today, which we're going to bring the bond people out either next month or the month after, the rates might be lower. So we don't want to look at just the principal. We want to look at what the principal plus the interest is.
We always consider annual debt service.
Yeah, the annual debt service. So.
And I want to be clear that we're targeting 20 million because we feel like that's the minimum that we can do to kind of maintain. And even then, we're kind of failing in some areas. However, if this committee came back and said that's just not tenable, then we understand that it is the purview of this committee to make a recommendation on what's appropriate for the city's long-term fiscal.
And what would be helpful for the committee is to kind of look at the cost benefit, like what do we have to eliminate to not do another 2 million of bonds?
So what I think would be very helpful, Hitesh, we've talked about this, but it would be good to, even if I understand some of it's back of the envelope math, but if we could say, we think we're probably looking at a $20 million per year GO plan is what we would like to do, okay? Aside from any individual project, it would be very helpful if you could forecast for us what's the property tax increase look like in year 5 and year 10? So if we start at 20 million a year, and then maybe we say you increase it 5% a year, right? What does that do to debt service? And then also these significant facilities, all right? So if we say we're at a base of 20, but we know we need to do new police and fire, whatever, at least what the current estimates are, it would be very helpful to know what is that indicated increase, because I think we might get to a number that people recognize as no way we can do that, right? But right now we tend to be way too much focused on this project and that project. Let's just keep it high level. If we accept that, if the wish list is 20 plus a little bit of inflation, how much have we increased a $500,000 home in cumulative taxes? Because we have 10 million a year rolling off. So the incremental 50 million in year 5, incremental 100 million by year 10. What have we done to the average price, the average property tax load? If we do 20% inflated, what would look like in year 5 and 10, plus over that period of time, we will have done some of these significant projects. And that would be very informative to say, is that a number that people can live with? And it might well not be, but it might then inform that we are in a period where we can't do what we want to do. And it's more of an austerity plan, which we've been living through. But the minute we recognize this is all that's affordable, that will inform what the projects are. And it could be an answer that nobody likes. And it might drive some actions that we would rather not do, but they are just forced by the math. But that starts with, if you guys, maybe even the next meeting, very top level, what have we done to the average property tax load of a $500,000 house in year 10, in year 5, and year 10, with $20 million a year plus the significant projects? Then we can fill in what those projects are.
Well, thank you. This was a great start, seeing our challenges, which I think we know, and also we appreciate your time in doing this long-term plan, because this is something our committee has been wanting and asking. So thank you, to be continued.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
And I'd like to now call, I don't know, Clayton or Hitesh to talk about our mid-year financial review. We'll see how long it takes.
Thank you, Chair Rikus. We've prepared a few slides. If you do have computers in front of you, I'd encourage you to use those maybe instead of the screen, because some of the numbers can be a bit small. So we do this each year at the midpoint. We're using June financials right now as we approach the end of August. Our July monthly report is nearly finished, but we look at the June report as kind of a good halfway point to come and present to you on the current fiscal situation. So we'll start with the general fund here, and then end with some of this brief discussion on some of the city's other funds. So at this point, the general fund revenue through June sitting at 54% of budget, expenses at 49% of budget. Of that, 76 million in revenue, 6 million of that is unbudgeted revenue from the Jacobs Center and Kellogg building projects. Regarding expenses, we're at 49% midway through the year, so expenses are tracking very well. And it's of note that there's been no major unbudgeted expenses this year in 2026. So every other year I've come up here and done this presentation, there's been some large unbudgeted thing that we've done earlier in the year, but that hasn't happened so far in 2025. Sitting on a net surplus of 3 million, were it not for that one-time permit revenue, we'd be at a net deficit of 3 million instead of a net surplus of 3 million. So the fund balance is sitting in a fairly healthy position as well at 52 million, which is 34% of the annual expenses. And again, were it not for the one-time permit revenue this year and the one-time permit revenue from last year, we would be at 35 million. So we brought in about 17 million, 18 million from those permit projects. So I can't emphasize enough just how much those one-time revenues have really distorted our financial picture and allowed us to defer some difficult decisions, including property taxes for 5 years, and as well as significant reductions to expenses.
So
Yes.
we don't get a heads up that they're going to be doing these projects like the Kellogg and the Jacobs Center so that we could budget for next year?
When it comes to these projects, Ryan Field was a good example. It was held up in litigation whenever we approved our budget from the year before. When it comes to these two projects in particular, it's such a big amount of money that we're very hesitant until the permit application is filed in order to bank on receiving this $6 million in revenue. They have told us it's a valid point and something that we should be doing year over year as part of our budget. This year, we have reached out to Northwestern, and they've confirmed that they have no major projects planned for 2026, given their current situation. So these 2 years of big projects have really helped us out, but we can't bank on that for 2026. Next slide. So taking a look at general fund revenues, there are 5 revenues that comprise 50% of total general fund revenues. One is the property tax. This language was from a couple weeks ago where Crane's article said that the second installment property taxes were delayed until at least September 1st, with October 1st more likely. We just got a communication from them today with no definitive date as to when that's going to happen. So we are still in wait and see mode. So at this point, October 1st is probably indeed more likely. Sales taxes, home rule sales taxes, and use taxes. So this is retail sales taxes continuing to do well this year, up 1.8% when you combine them together. There has been a restructuring in how these taxes are collected on online transactions. So over the past couple of years, Amazon transactions in particular and most online sales have been collected in the form of a use tax, which is distributed to communities on a per capita basis. Those have moved to a point of sale or a point of delivery tax structure. So now these sales are more contingent on the shopping patterns of our residents. So if our residents shop online more, they're going to be paying the home rule sales tax rate. So we should see an uptick. All in all, use taxes have gone from a $3 million budget to about anticipated $500,000. So that's plummeted, but we've seen that offset by increases to sales taxes and home rule sales taxes. So a whole lot of numbers moving in a whole lot of directions, but all in all, retail sales taxes are up 1.8% so far this year over last year. Income taxes, many folks think that because our residents have higher incomes than maybe the rest of the state, we would see more income taxes. It's not the case. Income taxes in the state of Illinois go into one big pot of money, and they're distributed on a per capita basis to communities and set by the General Assembly. So this can fluctuate based on how much of that big pot of money the General Assembly allocates towards communities. Fortunately, this has been trending up this year, though, and it's up 7.5%, a little bit above budget in 2025 compared to 2024 actuals. And then finally, the grocery tax we talked a bit about last night. And just for those residents on the committee, the City Council voted to do a special order of business on the first September meeting to adopt the grocery tax, an ordinance for introduction with adoption potentially by the end of September by a 5-3 vote. So more to come on that, but staff is working towards. Sorry?
Technically no vote in council.
There was a vote to do a special order of business to put it on the September agenda, but no action was taken. I thought there was some vote of some sort, but.
Correct. Yeah,
Right.
it's not. It is not adopted. It is
Correct,
not. We
correct.
cannot claim that the grocery tax has been implemented at Evanston. That would not be an accurate statement.
Correct. It represents $2.5 million in sales taxes each year. So that is talked so far. This slide covers 50% of revenues, all in all doing pretty well. Next slide, Mike. So digging
Oh, wait,
into.
I think we have a Councilman
Yeah.
Kelly, did you have a question?
I'll hold it till the end.
Taking a look at one of our more vulnerable revenues, the real estate transfer tax, very tied to real estate transactions. The first $1 million we've received and deposited in the reparations fund. This tax peaked at $6.2 million in 2021 when rates were really, really good. The last 2 years, it's been a little slow. So we went from the peak of $6.2 million and dropped in half to $3 million last year. Actually, $4 million last year. It would have been $3 million if it weren't for a really large property transaction at the end of last year. And it's continued to perform really well in 2025, likely to finish around $4.2 million. But you can see these spikes throughout the year, very contingent on really large commercial buildings, very large office buildings, and sale of those. But doing well in 2025. Next slide shows personal property replacement taxes. The green bar, which you can see at the bottom, represents 2025. So we have very much dropped down from the peak in 2022. And now we are very much in line with kind of pre-pandemic levels for personal property replacement taxes. IML is projecting a slight increase in this revenue for 2026. So we will, but it is going to finish well below budget in 2025. So we will budget it with that 7% increase from our projected actuals in the 2026 budget. A handful of other revenues. Building permits, as I've already talked about, doing exceptionally well. Budgeted at $5.5 million. It's expected to finish around 11 or 12. So all of that difference really tied to those Northwestern projects. Other taxes like amusement taxes doing really well. The amusement tax is tied to streaming services. We've seen a slight uptick in that. Ticket fines, investment income, ambulance fees doing well. This third bullet point talks about several of our stable, consistent revenues year over year, very easy to predict, very consistent. These include liquor taxes, parking taxes, motor fuel taxes, natural gas utility, wheel taxes, and the transfers between funds. Each year when we budget this, we're generally really on target with these revenue projections. A handful of revenues not doing as well. These include GEMT service revenue. This is likely to continue to be impacted given cuts to Medicaid by the federal administration. Electricity use tax. I don't know about everybody, but my electric bill has gone up this summer. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean more utility taxes for us. This is tied to usage and not rates. And finally, telecom taxes continue to decrease with less people subscribing to cable services. So in this brief presentation so far, I've talked about 84% of general fund revenues already. So that kind of gives you an idea of the major revenues and how they're performing. Two final bullet points at the bottom regarding expenses. Our vacancy rate was budgeted at 6%. Mike, we finished last year closer to 8%. So we felt comfortable with a 6% projection for this year. However, hiring has been accelerated this year, and we're actually sitting around closer to 4.5% with our current vacancy rate. So we think we'll save about $4.2 million from vacant positions. So at the end of the day, we are likely to go over budget on salaries and wages, salaries and benefits by at least $1 million because we overshot that vacancy rate given where we are right now. This is one of the challenges with doing a vacancy rate. The city didn't do it for many, many years. We've been pretty on target and in a good direction the last 2 years. Unfortunately, we're off a little bit this year.
Will that reduce other expenses, maybe consultants or other things?
No, not within the general fund. Potentially, maybe in some cases here or there, but I don't think that we'll see enough savings to offset the $1 million over budget amount here. And then lastly, which I've already mentioned, no major over budget expenses in the general fund so far in 2025. So this is the slide where, again, if you have a computer in front of you, I encourage you to use that instead of the screen. This summarizes low and high projections for all of our revenues. Where you see double green, that means we're likely to finish over budget. Where you see double red, we're likely to finish under. And the uncolored revenues are those stable, predictable, and consistent revenues that I talked about. So the wheel tax and some of those others that we set and we receive. After considering and projecting each of these, we're likely to finish somewhere between 5 and 10 million over budget on revenues. Keep in mind, 6 million of that is from the Northwestern permits. So outside of that project, our budget looks to be within about 2 to 3% from a revenue standpoint after excluding those Northwestern projects. And 2 to 3% is pretty on target for a $140 million revenue budget. So with this in mind, the next slide shows how we expect to finish 2025. We had a budgeted deficit of $11 million. We expect to finish with a deficit, but by a smaller amount than budgeted, likely somewhere between a $7 million and a $1.8 million deficit, and a fund balance finishing between $42 and $47 million next year. So with that in mind, we've just listed here a number of the challenges that we foresee as part of the 2026 budget. I've already talked about some of these, but after removing the one-time revenues, the city's general fund is in a structural deficit situation. The city's made some big decisions over the last few years without really touching revenues. These include the most recent collective bargaining agreement and a significant increase in our required public safety funding contributions. These two items alone constitute about $30 million in increases to our budget in 2025 than in 2021 between the wage increases and the increase to pension contributions. In that time frame, the second bullet point, property taxes have been frozen at 2020 levels. While other revenues have reacted to inflation, for the most part, that major revenue for the city's general fund has not been adjusted. And those two decisions, the increase in public safety pension contributions and the collective bargaining agreements, were made without an accompanying increase in revenues to do those things that the city moved forward with. To the second point, property taxes are still frozen at 2020 levels despite inflation of 25% since 2020. On the third bullet point, 2026 represents the final year that the city can spend its ARPA funding, so we need to figure out how we wind down and make sure those funds are spent and what we do with those programs beyond 2026. On the fourth bullet point, economic instability and local revenues, we haven't necessarily seen significant impact of tariffs and some of these other decisions by the federal administration, but certainly likely to impact our retail sales taxes moving forward. We haven't been able to quantify that or seen a massive impact on our local revenues because of those, but it's certainly possible. On the fifth bullet point, new general fund expenses in 2026. These include the rent at 909 Davis, vehicle purchases, which were previously we've been able to cover by ARPA investment income, but we've been drawing down our ARPA balance, which means we're generating less interest income, which means we've got to figure out how to pay for vehicles again in a post-ARPA environment. And then another big expense is triannual tree inoculation, which is a $750,000 expense for next year that the city does every 3 years related to trees. So that'll be a talking point certainly as part of the budget as well. Given feedback from the committee, the 2026 budget will also include a Parks and Rec fund. It's essentially a sub-fund of the general fund. Each of the city's comparable communities that we talk about at this committee has a separate park district that levies its own property tax to cover about 50% of its expenses. The city does not have a parks levy, which is why when we present that property tax rate data, our rate does come in well below virtually all of our comparable communities. And it's important to take a look at how much our Parks and Rec department is generating in revenue versus the cost to provide the services that they provide. We expect that decrease in permit revenue. Northwestern has shared they're likely to pause their construction projects in 2026. Pension funding, again, we talked about this earlier. We don't have the actuarial report, so we can't plan for this quite yet in 2026. So that compounds our issues with trying to put our arms around this very challenging budget season. And then finally, zero-based budgeting is underway and likely to have some recommendations as part of this budget season to implement as part of this budget, as well as recommendations to implement throughout 2026 to potentially save on some of the costs of our Public Works Department and result in efficiency in operations as well. So spent most of this presentation on the general fund, but want to highlight a couple others throughout our fund balance summary here. One is the Human Services Fund. This fund had a fund balance of $3.5 million in 2023, and it now sits at just $1 million. It's primarily supported by the property tax levy, and it's a really good microcosm of the city's general fund. It's significantly impacted by those wage increases that I talked about already, as well as expansion in programming for the CARES team, mental health board allocations, and Mayor's Summer Youth employment programs. So we have seen some growth in spending in those areas. And again, the revenue to that fund is really just the property tax levy, and it's been held flat and not increased to support this expansion in programming and wages for our employees. On the next slide, a couple more funds to highlight. The CIP fund, sitting now at a fund deficit of $9 million, cash deficit of $2.8 million. We'll be coming forward soon to talk about bonds for capital projects. The difference between those two continues to be the cash that's owed to IDOT for projects that are completed but not yet invoiced for. Our water fund is sitting on a large fund and cash balance at the moment, 14 million fund balance. Most of this is cash on hand from last year's bond issuance. It's been allocated to 2025 projects. And also, we received a reimbursement earlier in the year for our WIFIA loan. The water fund at year end goes through, as I talked about last month or the year before, or the month before, many audit adjustments. And so that loan reimbursement revenue gets adjusted as part of the audit. And it's not an adjustment that we make throughout the year. So you see that fund balance get adjusted back down to account for that reimbursement. But the cash really doesn't get touched as much, and is sitting at $15.8 million. And that is mostly remaining bonds from that bond issuance. I think that is it on the funds that I was going to, and also the three internal service funds, the fleet, equipment replacement, and insurance funds, which I'll actually talk about on the next slide. So next slide, Mike. So this shows those funds that have a required fund balance policy and the amount of excess or deficit within those funds. There are a few that are sitting on amounts well above their reserve. One is the MFT fund. Again, that excess reserve is reserved for projects that meet the state's requirements, and I believe has been encumbered against a number of large CIP projects. The The sewer fund is sitting in a large balance as well. There is a large capital project in the CIP for 2026, and that's actually in the CIP item that you just reviewed. If you look at the sewer CIP spending for next year, there's a large project. The water fund I already talked about, and then the fleet and insurance funds are both sitting on a small amount of excess reserve. This is something we can review as part of the budget because the primary funding source for our fleet and insurance fund is transfers from other funds. So this is one lever we have as part of budget where we can potentially reduce those transfers if possible as a means to invest the general fund if it proves out that we're putting more than we need to within those funds. But that's something we'll look at as part of budget in order to address all those challenges that I talked about before. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Clayton. This was very, very informative. We're going to have a lot more discussions. I'm going to try to keep the questions maybe to 6 or 7 minutes. So did you have some?
Expenses. How are we defining major?
In accordance with this.
Over 500,000.
Over
In accordance with that
500,000.
policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you. Easy answer to that question. Another question, why is the county so late in distributing property tax? It's not just us, it's everybody, but what's up at the county?
You want to speak to it, Nitesh?
I mean, they haven't publicly said much, but as far as we know, there is some system glitch, and I think they are using the software from Tyler Technology, from which we are using their software too. New World is under Tyler Technology. And obviously, in the past too, they had a finger pointing between Cook County Assessor and Treasurer and Cook County Clerks. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get hold of it, but looks like the system, and we have no news, so earliest the bill could, even if they go out next week, which is September 1st, with October 1 deadline. But yeah, we don't have any definitive answer when it would come and why is that. But the system glitch is the answer. Right now, they're pointing it to that.
Okay, thank you.
Was it 2 years ago the bills didn't go out till December 1st?
Same thing, yeah. They were like 3 months later, pretty much we are kind of going to be there.
All right, third question with regards to the GEMT funding, which is trending lower because of Medicaid cuts. Didn't we used that funding to pay for the third ambulance? And we were feeling pretty good about it for a while. Do we need to reevaluate that?
I mean, we are still working on it. There were some changes. There are some adjustments by the state government, the way they're calculating the rates. So we had a good, as a part of the budget, right, with the fire department, and we are going to adjust our budget numbers for 26 for ambulance revenue as well as the GEMT.
Right. So it looks like we'll still have enough revenue to cover that third ambulance.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Sure.
This was a great summary, and I think if we look on the how all of this has evolved over the 4 years or so that we've had a Finance and Budget Committee, I think this was a great summary to really understand this at a granular sort of level, and I think also the lack of big surprises on the downside in the budget. I think it's really good, and it shows development that's happened as well. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
And I second that. Councilman Kelly, did you?
Thank you, yeah. One thing I noticed, well, I was thinking last year we closed our pension deficit, largely the gap between the 90 and the 100% with the unexpected or unbudgeted fees from the stadium. And so now we have 6 million, 6.2 million. I'm wondering if we should also be looking at that this year to help close that gap between the 90% and the 100. Since that worked so well last year, that's what we voted to do. And so
Well, we've already are funding 100, so.
No, we have to get there. We have to decide how we're going to get there. Last year, we used that unbudgeted 10 million towards that. That was what we did. Of course, we're going to fund at 100, but we haven't yet figured out how. So I would suggest that we look at that. It worked well last year. So I just wanted to point that out, that 6.2 could potentially go to help close the 90 to 100% gap. And let's see, what else? Where are we at in terms of total PPRT right now to date? Is it up there?
Must be like $1 million.
As of now, as of August, end
It
of
was
August?
at 1,068,000. I can verify
That's
whether.
in June, right, or July?
Those are actually as of July 31st numbers. I can answer it in just a second, though. It matches the state website, so if you have a number that's a little bit more than that, that would be,
One extra payment, yeah.
yeah, there could be one more payment.
And, let me just clarify, Mike, can you bring up that where we say that IML's thing? Because IML's September thing came out today, and they said that will be 4% lower than the last year PPRT. So,
Right.
yeah, this was their thing like 2 months back in their monthly review magazine. Now, the one which came today, and they are showing a 4% reduction compared to the previous year. So we'll see that, they continue to update the numbers,
Sure.
but this is their latest number, which
So you estimate the total of PPRT will be what?
4% less.
I know, but what's the dollar
By
amount?
year end,
We'll have to see our share, but
We're getting another payment,
2.5, is that what we're?
2.5 or so? Okay.
No, the current estimate's 1.7 to 1.8
right.
That's where,
is the current
I
estimate.
think that's where we're at
Our
right
budget
now.
is 2.5, but we have only,
No, we've
I think,
collected
estimating
that so
around
far.
1.8 million. Yeah.
whole year, 1.7 to 1.
I think
1.7
we're
to
at
1.8 for the whole
1.7 right now. I think that's what we've already collected, David.
No.
We are,
No.
we are year-to-date at 1,126,781.
I stand corrected. So,
And our projection for year-end is 1.7 to 1.8.
Okay.
So given
I
that
see.
information from Hitesh, our budget next year will be 4% less than that 1.7 to 1.8.
No, and how does the state calculate PPRT? Or is it black box? They just
They,
say what it is?
there is a link to the page that talks about adjustments, and, I mean,
Chicago adjustment is there and all those kind of,
Okay, we're going to move on to.
sorry, one more question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just had one question. So, and what are the CIP projects that are being covered by the motor fuel tax? Are they, I mean, if it's just a couple, if it's easy to answer.
Roads.
If not, pardon? It's all, I just wondered, are they all the roads and bridges? Like, is it?
MFT covers a number of things. In the CIP that was listed, it covers street resurfacing. It's also used in our operating budget to cover road salt during snow operations.
I'm sorry, I just meant specifically, are there some big projects right now that are being covered with this excess reserves?
So
from-
we are proposing in 2025 budget, this current year budget, we're paying our matching funds of $1.8 million for the Green Bay Road construction using the motor fuel tax. And because we built up an excess, we are planning on using it for matching funds in 2026 budget as well as in 2027 CIP.
For,
So we haven't 100% decided. In 2026, we're proposing a big traffic signal improvement project that covers several traffic signals that are critical and can't be repaired anymore because they're so out of date. And then in 2028, we have three major streetscape, I'm sorry, in 27, we have three major construction projects in transportation, the Chicago Avenue project, the Church Street corridor improvement, and the Lincoln Street Bridge. And all of those have matching fund requirements. And so anything that we don't spend in 26, we will spend down the balance to make matching fund requirements. Now, the challenge with using as matching fund requirements is IDOT does not actually want it right away, and it will often take several years. So we have to do a really stellar job of tracking that commitment and not just looking at this and saying, oh, there's $6 million there. But yes, that is our plan to try to offset some of our GO bond debt.
thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I just trying to understand, since there is a considerable surplus, what that would be going to. Okay.
I have just a quick question.
Councilman Rogers?
Kind of following up on that. So how are our motor fuel taxes trending? Are we seeing increases? Are we seeing decreases? So do we anticipate that growing or shrinking?
So there's two motor fuel taxes. There's our local motor fuel tax, which is 6 cents per gallon, and then the shared state motor fuel tax. Hitesh, if you have that
yeah.
open.
Just like PPRT right now, the latest report is trending little lower IML review for the September says it would be like less by 4%.
And is that for both the local and
No,
the state?
local is our control, so it goes by the gallon locally.
Okay, so
This is
we're
a share on per capita from the state.
okay.
But at least we, like budget-wise, we will be at par with the budget, so we are fine.
Just a minute, because I can't hear you.
Okay,
real
go
well.
ahead.
Well, their discussion right now. Their discussion right now, so.
Can I please continue with my question and so I can hear? Thank you. So the state is both of them are trending lower, or just the state one?
State one. I mean, pretty much, this is, the other one is based on gallons consumption, so it's pretty good, yeah.
So
But the
that's
other
pretty
was-
stable?
Right.
Okay.
But those are two, yeah, our tax, which is.
I just
based-
want, because, I mean, we're sitting on a healthy reserve there,
Right.
and if
But
it's
what you
going
see
up and up,
But what you see in MFT fund is only state portion. Our portion is deposited into general fund.
okay.
So those are,
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you again for all the work, because it's really getting clearer and clearer every meeting on our state. Okay. G4, we have a discussion. If a motion wants to be made, that can be made, but Councilman Kelly, do you want to talk about what your referral was?
My referral is, I mean, it's good practice, widely accepted good practice to change out or not even to change necessarily, it's not axiomatic that we get a different auditor, but that we would issue an RFP for many reasons, for competitive pricing, for independence, for a fresh look at things. So the referral is that we would issue every 3 to 5 years. I would say 3 years, maybe with an extension to 2 years if council approves it, to 5 years. And I think that's a practice that happens a lot in some of these charts. Some of the numbers that we see here, some cities have simply did an RFP and hired the same firm back. But I think it is important that we're engaged in competitive bids for our auditor for all those reasons. So I would like to move. We have had this discussion already. I don't think we should be having this again. I think we should go ahead and.
Okay, just to refresh everyone, we are doing an RFP in 2026. I agree that for the reasons that you mentioned, that an RFP is in order. I think I know you've talked to a few people here. This may be a bigger item that, expenses over a certain amount, we should RFP because there is no policy. But let's talk about the auditors. The only thing that I'm thinking is I've seen more practices, the 7-year mark to do an RFP, just because there is time and of the staff time to do an RFP. So I just would like the committee to think if you want an RFP and if 5 years or 7 years.
I would say everything I've seen is 3 or 5, or renewing up to 5, but I haven't seen 7 as being, as a policy. I think that's.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments?
So this specifically says, I think it's anticipating rotation. It's one thing to get a new bid. A lot of times you'll see partner rotation with respect to, accounting firms on a set basis. But I think, as you just said, I don't think we need to anticipate that the auditor would necessarily change. We just want to revalidate what we're paying in process, and do we think we would get something more from another firm. So I think it's one thing to have an RFP to revalidate with the right auditor, but it's actually a big thing. It can be a big red flag to actually change auditors, and there needs to be a reason to do that. I agree that it is more customary to rotate partners. So, but maybe also it's part of a broader thing. Maybe every recurring contract over a certain dollar limit, we need to make sure we get rebid regularly, because it would be subject to the same.
Councilman Kelly?
So I don't think it's a red flag if it's a standard practice and it's a policy that we adopt. It's not a red flag, and it's also good for an auditor to know. I think it, ups the ante a little bit for them to know that we are going to be putting out an RFP, and it's doesn't mean a red flag if this is our stated policy. And I think would be very
And to be
healthy.
clear, if we do an RFP, the existing auditors can participate as part of the RFP. It's not a mandatory rotation. so.
All right, I'm sorry if it said mandatory rotation, I meant,
Okay, any other, Councilman Suffredin?
Yeah, I know we're talking about the auditor in this instance, but I think this is probably something that for all recurring contracts, it's probably a larger thing to be looked at. And I think the auditor is probably the only one that this committee should be talking about, but I think it's probably a larger discussion that should be had with the city manager, or would be more appropriate for administration and public works or another committee. So without getting too deep into what the best practice is as it relates to auditor, I think maybe it's more of an umbrella policy for all sorts of recurring contracts.
Good point. So are we ready? Did you want to make a motion?
sure, I'll go ahead and make a motion, but I do agree. I think that there's an issue with sole sourcing frequently because we're just renewing contracts. So absolutely, I think it needs to be looked at APW. So yeah, I'd like to move that.
Sorry, Councilman Newsom, did you have a comment or question before we?
Yeah, we're going to be rebidding the auditor next year, and we will have been with, who are we with?
Sikich.
For how long? For 5 years? Is that 10 years?
10 years.
10 years, yes.
Okay, but the contract was 3 years with 2 one-year extensions?
Right. Contracts was, I think, originally 5 years, and then we asked for the post-COVID, it's still like the market is tight for the auditors, accountants, and all that. So when I talk to some peers, and they say, yeah, we continued, and that's why we provided the list. That Sikich has been conducting some of the big communities, Schaumburg, Elgin, Palatine, for over 15, 20 years. And they sometimes ask for the rotation of their partner or the manager on, the...
Well, they have to rotate.
Right. But again, I mean, last time I think we got the direction, so next year we are going to do the RFP.
Yeah, so I think it certainly makes sense to rebid our auditor periodically. The question is how often. There are some setup costs, and on an annual basis, it would be cheaper if the period were a little bit longer. Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years? Is
I mean,
it 8
5 to
years line
7.
up to
I mean,
with
it
the
depends
council
on
setup?
situation. As we say, more and more communities trending towards a longer
Yeah.
period. But ask to change the manager or the partners. So, but yeah, 7 year could be a good kind of time frame.
Right, and in any case, require perhaps more frequent partner rotations.
Oh, yeah, well,
within
that's what they have to do.
Right, is that
That's-
annually, is that biannual,
No,
is that?
I think, I don't. 3 or
Partner
4
could be a
years.
little longer. They could change managers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
partner is very few partners. Sikich is the big firm, so we're having more partners. But yeah, some of the other firms.
I think for the time being, we're on a good track with regards to our auditor contract. If there's a bigger question about periodically renewing contracts beyond auditors, I think that's a bigger conversation.
Well, I think tonight, let's just deal with the auditors, but I think it's a good point to bring back to council about all the contracts.
Right. So, I mean, I would like to say 3 and extend it to 5, but I'm reading the room that folks would like it longer, so I'd like to move that we issue as a policy every 5 years with the possibility of extending up to 7 if there's a majority of council to support. So it's been moved and seconded.
Do you want to take a vote?
And we're changing the rotation word, right?
Yeah, and then the rotation word.
Take out the
What's
word,
the word?
issue an RFP, an
Issue
RFP for the city's auditor.
So again, motion and second on issuing a new RFP for our auditors, a 5-year with up to a 2-year extension would be the policy to create that. So taking roll on that motion, Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Committeemember McMillan. Aye. Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Committeemember Livingston.
Aye.
Chair Rikus.
Aye.
Councilmember Suffredin.
Aye.
And Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
8-0, thank you.
Okay. And council will look at other contracts. Okay, last point. This is discussion regarding the PPRT. I just want to put everyone on the same page. This is in your packet. In May of 2024, the Finance and Budget Committee considered to request to create an escrow account of 100% PPRT. The vote failed 2-4 on a record. At this meeting, the City Corporation Council noted that per the public safety pension policy, PPRT is one of the multiple revenue sources that the city can use to pay its annual actuarial determined contribution towards the public safety pensions. So, Councilman Davis, you made the referral. Can you kind of talk us through why you made this referral and what you want to discuss?
Yeah, so generally speaking, to me, when I first became aware of this issue, it felt like it mirrored a lot the issue with Social Security in the United States on the federal level, and that there are huge risks that come from, I guess, taking money from this fund when it is meant to be allocated strictly for one particular thing, and there not being much of a guarantee that we're giving this money back or that we're using it appropriately. And so, being good stewards of pensions in particular, given how critical they are for their purpose of supporting elderly persons who contribute significantly to our community, I think the most appropriate thing for us to do is to escrow it and to not touch it and to, maintain our fiduciary obligation and just make sure that we are doing best financial practices. And so that to me means keeping it in an escrow account.
Thank you.
That's it. I think it's pretty simple. It's very straightforward. There's a lot to explain here.
Okay, Councilman Kelly, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. No, I agree with this, and I think it is a way to, in the past, we've seen for over 10 years that there was, this year, in fact, I don't think there's any actually allocated in the budget. I'm not sure why. There's no amount allocated, and previous to this year, I think this year and last year, there was nothing allocated, if I'm not mistaken. And previous to that, it was $605,000. Out in one year, we did hit a high of like $6 million, but it was always $605. I'm not sure how that determination was made, but for many years, it was just this fixed low amount. So I would agree. I think this is an important way to safeguard our full funding policy going forward, and it's a way to really avoid having sort of the debates and the arguments about how are we going to fund it if we simply allocate the full funding, the full amount of the PPRT, which Corporation Council has confirmed, and thank you, President Martel, for these emails, to say that, in fact, we can put it entirely towards the pensions.
Committee Member McMillan and then Committee Member Livingston.
Thank you. I think there's a couple other good things that would come of this. It shows the rating agencies that we're serious about taking care of this. And, frankly, I just don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it. I think it's good for us to have that, in their advent. I know that it finally resolves the issue. I know there's the argument of it's all fungible, but no, let's make sure that our public pensions are taken care of first and foremost. Because I don't ever want us to be in a position where we're saying, hey, we're raising taxes because of the public pensions. This is it's a non-discretionary item. It should be cordoned away. And I think that's I agree with Councilmember Davis.
Okay, Committee Member Livingston.
Okay. So I don't agree that we need to escrow the PPRT. If you look at, we're paying $30 million in today, 20 million of that is coming from a dedicated property tax. We're discussing the PPRT numbers. It's under $2 million for this year. It is a component of overall revenues of the general fund. Ultimately, it's the general fund that is responsible for making that $30 million contribution. And I don't really see why we need to put this additional constraint on the general fund. With respect to the rating agencies, I think it's the totality of our pension funding policy that would give them comfort, not this one PPRT revenue source that is not something that we control the generation of, that is nearly as significant as just the overall commitment that we will make this contribution out of the general fund. And if the general fund does not have the excess reserves available to make the contribution, that we would trigger a property tax increase. The complexity, and it's just not, it's not, I guess, so should we start dividing the general fund into all sorts of individual funding sources? So I don't see the need to do it. And PPRT is not required to be, as we've referenced before, it's not required to be spent on pensions. It's a general fund revenue source, and I just
don't understand the argument against, really. It isn't that complex. An escrow fund, it's a very easy thing to set up.
So I think it's an unnecessary step, is just the bottom line.
Councilman Newsom?
Thank you. I think I'm going to agree with Member Livingston. And if I could ask staff to put page 54 of 59 on the screen, just so we have some numbers to look at. And this looks at our pension contributions going back to 2018 and what the PPRT revenue was in each year. So let's look at that PPRT revenue in 2022 was the highest year. That was an outlier, 5517. Does everybody see that right there? Go down a little bit more. 5517. Like that in the last 7 years was the most PPRT revenue we made. Go up to our pension contributions that year was 21,112,000. So even in the year when we got the most PPRT, it was only about a quarter. In fact, 26% of the required contribution that year, and that money is essentially just a pass-through. And yeah, we could set up an escrow account, but why? Like it's an unneeded step. And even if the PPRT money were formally locked up in an escrow account, it doesn't fully fund our pensions. Like we are still by a factor of 3 or 4 or 5 times more going to have to come up with other money to fully fund the pensions. So I don't see it as a necessary step. Like at the most, maybe we want to revise our policy to just make it abundantly clear that all PPRT revenue, shall be used towards our pension obligation. But we've been doing that at least for the last few years, and we're still going to have to come up with much more money on top of that. So I don't see this as a necessary step at all. It doesn't solve a problem.
Councilman Kelly, did you have another comment?
Sure. No, I would just say, if I could designate 5 revenue streams to ensure that we're closer to that every year and not having to look less to our excess reserves, I would do that too. This is one revenue stream that is really intentionally, it's stated over and over again. You can look at the IML website. I mean, this is one of the primary purpose is to meet pension obligations. And if you look at the document that's included in there from the Commerce Department, the DOC document, I mean, it even says you should really not use this for anything else until your pension obligations are taken care of. So yes, you can get around it. You don't have to, but it is intended for that purpose. So designating this revenue stream is something that we can count on every year. Yeah, it'll vary in amounts between 1 and 1 year it was 6, but it's one chunk of money that every year is going to that. That's that much less that we're going to have to, think about where we're going to tap into. And furthermore, Jonathan, it was in our policy that we worked very hard on. Most of us at the time understood that number 2, it said the maximum allowable PPRT would go towards the pension, and Alex Ruggie did confirm, as President Mortels shared with us. She said it's obvious that of course you can apply it all, but since you all needed confirmation from the Corporation Council, she said she was able to confirm that the city can allocate the entire 100% of the PPRT to fund pensions. So it just seems to me very obvious that we should do this. Let's, that's that much less that we then need to think about every year what we have to allocate. And also, Hitesh, I don't know, why isn't there anything allocated this year and last year? Why, I believe it was this year and last year, it's left blank entirely, as if none of it was going to the pensions.
Okay. Few things about this whole discussion which has been going on for the last 10-15 minutes. First thing, City Council approved the contribution from general fund without identifying the PPRT.
No, we did identify the PPRT. It was in our
Not the
resolution.
amount. The City Council
It
said,
says the maximum amount allowable in our
right,
resolution.
I mean, that's where I'm coming there.
This is one of the following
So
sources.
City Council said, ask the actuary to prepare a 100% funding report requirement. What is the funding requirement? We kept the City Council decided to keep the levy flat, and any excess contributions would come from the general fund reserves. This is how City Council adopted. So I don't know which one. Second thing is, maximum allowable doesn't mean 100%. You know, let's bring it up this page number 56 and read the part 2. What does it say? Second lien on the personal property replacement shall each calendar years for pension obligations of the local government, including IMRF, Social Security, police pension, fire pension. What is our IMRF commitment? $1 million. What is our Social Security commitment? $5 million. So if I set aside this money for just police and fire pension, I won't be in compliance with the state because it said it must be satisfied before that. Right now I satisfied because we don't identify. It is everything in one part, general fund. And we fund Social Security, we fund IMRF, we fund fire pension, we fund police pension. The moment you set aside this thing, I'll be in violation of this thing because I'm like, okay,
No,
what
you're
did
not
you
in
do?
violation. Hitesh, I'm sorry, but that's absurd. I've spoken to the head of IDOR. We, of course,
What is
we
this
can-
thing?
But of course we can put it all towards our pensions. And look at what it says here. The basic intent of the law is to prevent excessive taxation of real estate.
No.
And the whole intention is to make sure that we're putting this to offset our pension
I would
liability.
leave it up to the committee
Look at, you
members.
know,
I mean, how do you read the part 2? I mean, I don't.
So you're contradicting what Alex Ruggie said in this letter. She says very clearly, I was able to confirm that the city may allocate 100% of the PPRT to fund.
May.
This is just political grandstanding.
No, it's not political grandstanding. It's like, just allocate some revenue, full revenue. This is a revenue stream that is intended to
I'm sorry,
support our
Hitesh, did you
pensions.
have a few more comments?
I mean, so that's the second part. Maximum
Okay.
allowable means under the, and again, I mean, the actuaries years back when I first started here, and it was like something around 4.765% contribution based on that time the actuaries report was set aside for the police and fire pension, you know? So when they say 100%, and again, I go by these things, it says those obligations must be satisfied before the funds can be used for other purpose. So, I mean, what would I do towards Social Security pension, IMRF pension? So, but right now we are in one part. The other thing is, general fund is already facing a huge deficit. If you are taking away 2 million or 3 million, that means that right there the deficit goes up for the general fund. So I don't know the purpose of setting aside the escrow. So I won't recommend that, but again, it's up to the committee to say that. Yeah, it doesn't serve any purpose in my mind.
Councilman Davis, you had a comment?
Yeah, so Hitesh, so are you saying that we can't separate out this money because otherwise it'll be clear that we can't afford to pay the pension and Social Security, and we're basically keeping it together to hide that?
No, I don't say that, but right, okay. Oh, okay. I don't say that we cannot pay that, but the thing is, I think if you read the section 2, I think it is on page 56, it says all these obligations must be paid. Now, right now, we are paying all these obligations out of the general fund. If we set aside for just one thing, then I'm not giving the enough money for the Social Security. I mean, that's kind of the thing. So that's why I don't want to create anything and which could become the issue, or I'm not setting aside the money for the IMRF, which is required under this thing. So that's why I would be kind of, not recommending this to kind of create an escrow account for the PPRT for the pension funds. And what purpose
Okay.
it serves,
Okay. Wait, so, sorry, that still doesn't make sense to me. Could you say that again, just a different way? Like, what's happening with the Social Security?
Right. So, I mean, can you bring up the thing, Mike? Can she see that? Can you see the thing where like a page? So read this section 2 here. It says the lien on the personal property replacement tax funds each calendar year is for the pension obligation, but that definition of pension includes these IMRF, Social Security, which is FICA and Medicare, and then police and fire pension. Now, if you just set aside that for one out of those four, and the sentence further says, all pension obligations must be satisfied before the funds can be used. Right now, it is all in general fund, and we fund out of general fund, so we are kind of in compliance. But if we set up the escrow for only one of them, that could potentially be the issue. I don't know, but that's how I read it.
So are you saying that we want to put all four of them in the escrow?
No, I won't create the escrow, so it is like a general unrestricted money in the general fund, like we have been doing it, so there is no issue of any non-compliance right now.
Okay,
Yeah, but
Councilman
the issue that
McMillan.
you
I'm
just
sorry.
mentioned would be
Councilman.
solved if we just put everything in the escrow, like all four of those items instead of just one.
I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, it's up to you. Then there won't be left with that much fund balance, I guess, because the FICA and Medicare is around $5 million. IMRF is around $1 million. And these pension obligations is around $10 million. I mean, excess contribution, okay, other than tax levy, yes. I mean, and then.
So it's a small portion of each of these.
No, we have a surplus
Okay.
in the IMRF.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand and I'll also add that it just seems like by not separating out this money, we are kind of, I guess, postponing a problem with our funding by borrowing from this fund, which I think is the main point of why we need an escrow, so that we have to be more frugal and just, I guess, prudent with the current funds that we have, so that we aren't hiding structural problems. Because I will say that I do get the sense, based on the spending in the city, that we are not spending as if we have a structural deficit problem. And if we are at the point where if we were to separate all of our funds, all of our pension requirements and obligations, and we wouldn't be able to pay our bills, then we are broke. We are broken. We probably should separate out this money, because my worry next is that based on how spending is going, we will actually see a reduction in the amount that we have set aside for pension. I've seen no promises otherwise based on, the conversations we've had. And I do think that if anything, it will socially engineer us as like a city to heavily think about our budget if we can't just play around with people's retirement funds.
So, okay, go ahead.
It's kind of obvious I'm going to vote. I put it up, and that's just what I'm just going to put it out there.
Right.
Thank you, Hitesh, for your clarifying statements.
Right, but again, and I would clarify one more thing. If you think that if we don't put into the escrow, there could be a jeopardy to the police and fire pension contribution, absolutely not. CT accepted 100% funding thing. It is the question or the issue is the funding source. No matter what, whether we levy the tax, we give it out of general fund or some other dedicated revenue. But there is a commitment on the city's part to give 100% funding contribution based on the actual valuation. So there is no kind of a risk on not funding that 100%, and that's where it doesn't serve the purpose of escrow. Yeah, if it is a potential risk to that, yeah, that makes sense that let's set aside this money, so that we don't have to find this money. But yes, city has already accepted the policy with 100% funding contribution. I mean, makes sense to the others. I mean, that's how I see that, yes.
Okay, I think we have to wrap this up. Did you have one more comment?
Yes, I do. On the one comment I would make is on page 56 of the same document that you shared. It says in section 2, all pension obligations must be satisfied before the funds can be used for any other purpose.
Right. So think about it. Every year you look at the highest number is $5 million, right? 1 year we got PPRD. What did we do out of that PPRD? We paid to the police pension, we paid fire pension, we paid IMRF, and we paid Social Security, and we were still short.
So can you provide us with a breakdown of how you're allocating the PPRT money? Because the IMRF, we don't have a debt liability with the IMRF. So why are we applying this fund, which is supposed to be earmarked to help cover pension debt liabilities and obligations? The IMRF,
Not
we're
the
doing
pension liability, pension contribution. And there is the IMRF contribution too.
We had our Councilman Ruge here, and she went through all of this last time we were here. There is a minimum amount, there's a formula from 1978.
Yes.
And if we want her to show us that, we can. If we want her to look at that statement that you mentioned about the other sources, we can get a legal opinion from her, and we can vote on it next month. But
So she also confirmed that we can put it all towards that if she wants. That it's
we
perfectly
can.
legal.
She said we can, but
And I think
that's
to
not the.
Councilmember Davis's, this is one way to secure a commitment from a funding stream so that we have our regular base levy plus this amount every year, and it's that much
I would
less that
feel
we
more
need to-
comfortable getting an opinion from her because she was, and one more comment, and then I think we'll have to vote on this next because,
Separating out this money just takes money away from the rest of the general fund. It solves
Exactly.
absolutely no problem. It solves nothing. And it's a very small part of the current $30 million overall contribution.
So I think ultimately it's a philosophical division here between those of us who see this as discretionary expenditure, the 100%, and those of us who see it as non-discretionary and want to see it baked into our regular budget. And there's others who want to see it maybe put out there as, oh, do we have to raise taxes for it? And I see this as a very much a non-discretionary expenditure, and I want to see those revenue streams allocated so that in future councils too, we continue to pay this down without it ever becoming a political football as to whether or not we have to raise the taxes. That's when it will be at jeopardy. And this is the best thing right now we can do for our residents and their property taxes is to be paying this down. And to prevent that ever, getting to that point, that's why we need to dedicate a funding stream like this one, which is so appropriate to fully dedicate towards our pensions. Thank you.
okay, I think we're going to table this for next month. I would, if you can get an opinion from our legal counsel, the pros and cons, and we will vote on it next month. I appreciate everyone's comments. Anyone else have anything else to add before we adjourn? Okay.